has not happened for an age. Entmoot.
Hello and welcome to Entmoot Live on Thursday the 14th of January. It's me, Harry, here, and it's Entmoot Live because, well, why not? It's the second week of the new year. We've got lots of lockdown still yet to come, but lots of hobby to talk about still, especially after the first 2 weeks of this year. We've feels like we've been inundated with teasers and all this sort of stuff in the first part of the year. This week, or I suppose this fortnight, I think this is going to be a fortnightly thing, by the way. We're hopefully going to be talking all about painting generally and getting some expert pro tips from Sam McGuiness, who I'll introduce in a second. And also we're going to talk about some of the news and some of the things that have just been coming out in the last couple of days. I know there's lots of excitement around some pre-orders coming this weekend as well. So welcome along to the stream. I see people are commenting below with their comments and good evenings and all that sort of stuff. Welcome along. Do let me know you're in the building, and let me know what you're working on as well. If you're sat there with a toy soldier or two to paint along with the stream, that would be amazing. Just let me know what you're painting. I'd love to see it as well. If you follow the link from the Great British Hobbit League that says Entmoot Live with some amazing painting tips from Sam McGuiness, then just comment below with a pic, and I might be able to download them, get them on screen, see your progress, see what's going on this Thursday evening. So let's just, before we get Sam on, I'll just say hello to a few people specifically. Frederick Schultz is in the building. Evening. Nathan Talbot says evening all. Nathan says I've got a bottle of red and a free bag of Harry ready because I'm classy, very classy indeed. Callum says good evening. Luke says good evening, peeps. Michael, evening, Harry, evening all indeed. Okay, so welcome along. As I mentioned, it's going to be a bit of a painting bonanza because I think sometimes these live streams don't focus enough on the actual painting. We talk about games. We talk about all sorts of different manner of things, the news and all that sort of stuff. But it's time, I think, to give a painting the spotlight it deserves. So welcome along to Sam McGuiness.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Yes. Good evening. Good evening, Sam. So I like that. As soon as you came on, there was a big outpouring of breath into the microphone. It was.
Oh, sorry.
No, it was absolutely fine. It sounded ace. We knew you were here in the building. Well, Sam, welcome along. So first of all, I mean, just good evening to a couple more. Guardians of Wiltshire. Good evening, wonderful man. I'm not sure he's talking to me or you, but who else have we got in the building? We've got some comments pouring in. Nathan says working on some bases tonight, nothing fancy. Michael Haskell's working on mounted and foot-mounted Gandalf and Pippin. Excellent stuff. He's got a bottle of red too as well. Awesome. Sam, so first of all, just introduce yourself to everyone who's watching. And who are you? And I suppose what's your hobby history? How long have you been into the game? What kind of person are you in terms? Are you a gamer, a hobby, a painter primarily? Let me know. Let's start from the top.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Sam McGuiness. I have been in the hobby since 2008, I think. No, 2003, sorry. So it was with sort of the release of the Lord of the Rings films. I really got into it. I started off quite young and fell in love with sort of like 40K and all of that before the movies come out. And then the movies come out and I fell in love even more with like the Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit's always been my favourite book. It was the first book I ever read when I was a little baby. It took me a very long time to read it, but I enjoyed it so much. And then to see these little miniatures that come out was amazing. So I got into gaming at a very young age. And then as time sort of progressed and I grew up, I sort of always kept a foot in the hobby, not always taking it as seriously as I do now. But I spent a lot of time just picking up random miniatures, just painting. And then a couple of maybe 7-8 years ago, I really got back into it. I decided to start going to Warhammer World events with a couple of friends. So we would head up there and we met some of the amazing members of the Great British Hobbit League. Which sort of really drove me to start investing more heavily in the hobby and going to more events. So I've always been more of a painter than a gamer. I wouldn't say I was a tactical genius by any stretch of the imagination. I hold a wooden spoon from Warhammer World for being the only gamer that weekend who didn't win a single game, which was great, amazing. But other tournaments, I've ended in the top sort of 7 or 8 people, which has always been great. But I'm predominantly a painter. Around work, I find a lot more time to paint. Whenever I get a spare second, I sort of fall into painting. Finding a game hasn't always been the easiest thing for me. It's always been those tournaments that sort of driven me a little bit, so that I get to game at least once or twice a year up at Warhammer World. Which is great. That's what is the real driving factor in our hobby as a hobby group. So me and a couple of my friends do head up to as many as we can get to. Yeah.
And you, I mean, you mentioned, I want to delve into that a bit more actually, because you sort of said that you got into 40k a bit before the Lord of the Rings. Was that in anticipation of knowing that Lord of the Rings was out, or was it a bit closer, or did you find Lord of the Rings first? Or sorry, I just just intrigued at the exact hobby birth.
Well, it was a long time ago. So
yeah, sorry, I know it's been 20 years or something, but yeah.
I think, oh God, when was it? So the Fellowship was released 2001, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. December 2001.
Yeah, so it must have been 2000 that I got into the hobby. It was before the Lord of the Rings was even teased by GW. So I was 7 years old. My older brother got into it with me. We walked past the Romford store and we saw the brand new plastic Land Raider in the window, and we thought they were just toys, so we wanted to buy some. We got some for Christmas, not realizing that you had to assemble and paint them. So we got this figure set of 40k, and we started building and painting them together. And we both really enjoyed the painting side of things. So that's where it really started out. And then the Fellowship of the Ring was released, and I remember it was Bilbo's birthday bash, where it was that first core set of elves and Numenorians against the Moria goblins, and there was a Bilbo Baggins on the table, and you had to run the Bilbo Baggins from one end of the table all the way to the other without the goblins stopping him. And that was my first intro game, and that's the first bit of sort of like gaming, like strategy battle that we had, and it was amazing. We really enjoyed it, and then we just got into the Lord of the Rings a lot more because of the movies. We loved every second of them. So
yeah, I think everyone's in the same boat there in terms of just if you played toy soldiers when the Lord of the Rings came out, it pretty much took over, didn't it? I mean, I know I remember the times when it came. I'm trying to think. I think I must have been like you. The timeline's hazy because I must be about the same age. I'm 27 as well. So but like I remember watching. Let me think. I'm trying. Yeah, I got some Chaos Knights from a car boot sale at some point. And I was aware of Warhammer, and then at some point, not long after, I became more aware of the Lord of the Rings, and then suddenly it all exploded. And I remember the Two Towers box mainly. That was the one that got me. I think by the time that I'd sort of realised there was a Lord of the Rings game, I was well into the Two Towers films and all that sort of stuff. I remember swinging cardboard axes around the playground and all that sort of stuff, which is age. Yep. But yeah, I mean, it just shows how resonant it was. The hobby had kind of inspired people. So many people I know got into toy soldiers because of those films and those early models.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's testament to those early miniatures that, like, some of them still are my favorite miniatures of all time. Like that Bilbo miniature that they released with the first movies, holding the little ring in his hand. Like, I've painted that miniature probably like 6 or 7 times.
Oh, really?
Like, just because I painted it when I was a kid. I painted it again for a painting contest when I was about 15, 16. So I've painted it a few times, and it's those old miniatures that I still love and adore, but the new stuff as well is just so inspirational that it just keeps me in the hobby, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it keeps the flame alive, doesn't it? I think I agree with you. I love some of those old models, and I've just recently painted some more Numenorians, those very first plastics it released, and they're great models. I really liked painting it, and it did give me fond memories of painting those early plastics way back when. It must have been nearly 20 years ago now, but yeah, and like you say, the hobby flame is kept alive by these new ones coming out, and the excitement they always bring is exciting, which we will talk about in a few minutes time. But you mentioned you're a painter primarily, and that's actually why I got you on. I've been teasing ahead to this, is that one of your your models that you shared in the Great British Hobbit League was just when I asked you, basically, it was the most shared and most engaged with photograph on the Great British Hobbit League Facebook page. I'm an admin on the GBHL somehow. I'm not actually allowed or meant to do any of the admin stuff, but I'm doing it so that I can post the Outrider posts and pin them, essentially. That's it. But I have a dig around in the stats, and this image or this model was the most shared and engaged with model in the whole of the thing. And there was like thousands and thousands of people saw, liked, wow, faced it, and commented underneath saying, amazing paint job. And this is your Knight of Dol Amroth. So, I mean, this is why we got you on. So just first of all, I'm intrigued. Where did your ideas come from for this particular one? We'll go into more detail later, but this particular one is quite something.
Cheers, thank you very much. Like the reaction to it was something that I wasn't expecting. Like fundamentally, this come from a conversation with my good friend Paul Merritt. We were talking about armies, and predominantly I really struggled to come up with like good armies to play. So we were talking through a couple of ideas, and one of them was Knights of Dol Amroth, and like how I can like put my own spin on it a little bit, because I don't necessarily like doing things straight out of the box. I like to like change it a little bit, maybe do some conversion work, and we were talking about the Knights of Dol Amroth and how I could change them and make them my own a little bit, and we were talking about. At the time, I was painting a lot of I'd painted a desert board, so I wanted something to go along with that. So he, for Christmas, got me a Prince Imrahil, which was amazing, and a box of knights. So I basically just started putting them together, figuring out what sort of color scheme I wanted to go for, and then I realised that I hadn't really used contrast paints that much. So I pulled out the contrast paints, and this is predominantly contrast painted up.
Wow, that really surprises me, actually, because I've never seen such a detailed model in contrast. Usually it's people going, well, let's just smack a bit of paint on and make an easy job of it and crack on. But this is detailed. Yeah.
So I think I only used two colors for base colors that wasn't contrast paint. So that was for the silver. I used lead Beltrin for the red. But every single piece of the miniature has had contrast paint on it at some point. So yeah, it was just an experiment, really. I just sort of threw some paints onto a white base coat just to see how it would flow and stuff, and then just sort of built it up after that. So it's all base coats and then like 2 or 3 highlights after the contrast paint. So just to make it like smooth it out and get rid of some of that pooling in certain areas. And then it's just detail work over the top. So.
Well, I mean, it looks amazing, and we'll open that up again later because I wanted to just drop a bit of that in right now because I want people to basically drop in some questions, ask questions. You've seen the lovely Dol Amroth there, and a lovely idea, a lovely alternate paint scheme, as Nathan says. And I just kind of want people to say, well, ask Sam some questions. You know, have you got any questions about that one? Any other models you've seen? Any painting tips you want? Drop them all in the comments below, and we'll deal with that all later. But first, I want to get on to some news. And Sam, you're officially a guest co-host. That's what you're here for. You're not a guest. You're not a person to be interviewed. You're a co-host. And so we're going to delve into some of the news on the hobby front at the moment. And we'll talk a little bit more about your painting history and all that sort of stuff later. But big news this week. We've got some new models returning to the range. Now, I don't know whether you saw this image earlier on today. I think it was today or maybe yesterday. This is ace. What a great photo that is. What did you think when you saw, these Quest of the Ringbearer models, these ones in particular, but some of the new releases we're going to get, or the returns to the range? How do you feel like that?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think like a lot of the old sculpts, as I said previously, are like favourites of mine, and to have them back in the range and available again is only a positive. Like the more miniatures we have, the better. And some of these are some of my favourite miniatures of all time. Stuff that I didn't pick up when I was younger or when it was available last. So it's really excited about it. Like really excited.
Is there anything in particular? Because I must say, I actually managed to acquire these ones that we're looking at right now not too long ago, maybe a year ago or less, and they are amazing miniatures. And I think I painted one of them up as well. I got them at the same time as the the Mordor orcs, Sam and Frodo, where they're sort of dressed in the armor. And these are some awesome models. But are there any that you're particularly eager to get your hands on out of this new batch, or are you being a bit sort of careful with splurging money on these? Because there's a whole list here. I mean, if you want to have a look.
yeah, there is a lot of them coming out. I think I've literally just bought a brand new army.
Okay.
Like to get painted up. One of them was scrolling the internet looking for a mounted Glorfindel, which took me a fair while, and then literally 3 days after I managed to find one, GW releases one. So
it always happens.
Yeah, it always does. But I think I've got every miniature I need for the new army currently. But I'm sure I'll pick some of them up down the line.
Well, you mentioned Glorfindel. What's the new army? Is it Rivendell?
No. So I have a thing. I've never painted an elf in my history of being in the GW hobby. Like,
no, I don't like elves either.
I really don't like elves. Always loved the dwarves. Never painted an elf though, so it's not something that I've ever tried to do. So I wanted to do an army that sort of like parodied one of my evil armies that I have, because I find collecting evil so much easier for some reason. Mainly because of my hatred of elves. I think it makes it quite hard to pick an army where there's not an elf in. So I thought I'd bite the bullet finally. And I'm doing the White Council to go against my Necromancer and the Dark Powers of Dol Guldur.
So you're going for the full White Council then, with like the classic one with Glorfindel and people like that, or are you converting Glorfindel? No. Is Glorfindel in the old council? I can't remember. Go on.
Well, he's in the list that's currently there at the moment. So it's basically the army's going to be every single member of the White Council minus Gandalf, because at that point he was in a cage. So I'm not going to be able to play with Gandalf, which is fine. But I've got a Gandalf miniature ready to convert into an objective marker. So
yeah, I mean, we'll go into this a lot more later with your amazing boards that you've done and some of the conversion work you do. But that does sound really awesome. I'm excited. But so yeah, you've been quite sensible. You're not going to be picking them up. I think I'm going to have to pick up some new models just because they're there. And I think for me, if you look at this list, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. I think Gildor is the thing that sticks out for me though. For a long time, I've wanted to do a silly army of Gildor, Arwen, the 4 hobbits, and a load of elves, that sort of thing, to do the road to Rivendell of sorts, maybe build a pony and people like that. And even now that there's those 2 new cool Bree characters as well, the Barlaman and Harry Goatleaf. So I think that's for me. That's I'm going to have to get Gildor, but as is tradition, I'll probably buy him and then he'll stay in a box for about 6 months to a year before he actually sees tabletop action. So maybe you're a bit more strict at that. I'm guessing you are, right? If you're being very cautious and not buying into this new delivery.
Not usually, no. I just usually accrue a massive hobby backlog. But this year I've managed to churn my way through most of it.
Have you?
Yeah. Being furloughed for most of the year, I had plenty of time to do some painting. So which was a blessing. So I'm trying to keep the backlog down to a minimum as much as possible now. So that when
just tell me about that, because 2020, it's been a rough year for some people, and some people have been still working through it, but most people have found extra time. But it sounds like you've found plenty of time and actually been very productive with it as well, which is also a rarity.
Yeah, 100%. It was a big thing for me. I had to find something to do. So painting was my go-to. I couldn't do any gaming, so I started painting up loads of bits for board games, and I painted the 3 trolls at the beginning of it.
Nice.
Yep, and then I ended up painting a full battle company of Space Marines because I hadn't played 40k in about 7-8 years, and the new edition was about to come out. So I was like, I'll paint up some 40k to give it a go, and my 1,000 points of Space Marines turned into a company, which just I don't know how it happened. It just happened, and that burnt through all of my old 40k stuff that I had lying around, and then it was picking up bits of strategy battles to start painting. So.
Well, I mean, it does sound productive. I've been quite productive, but that does sound impressive to be able to paint a whole Space Marine battle company.
Yeah, it was Yeah, I just really like. I went down the rabbit hole like I do usually with painting. I don't usually paint that often. I'll go from not painting for 6 months, and then I'll have 2 months of just painting everything in the world. It's how it usually goes. I usually paint. Like I usually do my painting in just like stints where I'll sit down for 10 hours, paint continuously, wake up the next day, sit down, do it again and again and again. And then I'll sort of get a bit of hobby burnout. So I won't touch it for a couple of weeks, couple of months. So this time that stint was about 3-4 months of just solid painting, which was great. Like I kept motivated through it, which was good. Like I was watching a lot of like Warhammer TV and like all these different streams and like and just to keep me motivated and to have someone to like listen to as I was painting through it. So shows like this are brilliant for that. Like you can sit down and listen and it really does motivate you.
I might put that on the poster, Sam McGuiness. Shows like this are brilliant. Full stop.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. They are, and you do a great job. So you do a really good job.
It is. You're right, though, and I think this is why I wanted to do something a bit like this, because there's nice to have the little sort of interaction, the comments and stuff. And I'll get to your comments in a few minutes, guys. But like just to have two people chatting just gets you in that headspace, doesn't it? About the hobby. We're talking hobby, and people go, right, okay, this is hobby time, and I think it certainly focuses me when I watch battle streams in Middle Earth. I see Top Table Steve down there in the comments as well. So it really does focus your mind on the hobby, which is quite nice sometimes. Yeah,
definitely. Even if it's not talking directly about your hobby, like it reminds me very much of being sat in a games workshop and just sitting there and painting. I used to do it quite a lot just to be around the hobby. It stops me getting distracted by TV, by movies, by things outside of that. Like it just keeps me in that hobby mind, which has always been great. And it makes me a lot more productive, which is good. So
yeah, that's a good point. You know what? You've never, I've never really thought about it like that, but you've hit on something a really good point, because I used to go to my local games workshop. It used to be probably every Saturday for many years, well, at least 2 or 3 years back in Boston when I used to live there, and it's really nice to just sit down, get your guys out, and maybe you're planning to go because you want to have a game or whatever, but you've got some paints just in case. And yeah, you're right, and you just sit there painting, and people are talking about their armies, they're building lists, and they're talking through it, and they go, oh yeah, what do you think to this list? What do you think to that? And all that sort of stuff. And it does feel like, and that especially when we're doing this sort of thing, it's the closest we can get at the moment. Let's be honest.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I think that was always a big thing for me, was surrounding myself in hobby to keep me focused on the hobby. And these shows are brilliant for it.
Well, I'm glad you think so. Well, let's just have a delve into some of those people who are commenting. Now, what we've got? So there's a bit of banter between Nathan and Michael about spilling red wine over Gandalf the White. Will it be Gandalf the Red? Watch the slots. And then Guardians of Wiltshire, so that's Dewey, says, now I should say wonderful men. I think he said, good evening, you wonderful man, earlier. And he said, Michael said, if I drink too much, Gandalf could become a wizard of many colours. Excellent stuff. I like the Lord of the Rings references. This is where we feel at home, isn't it? Joe, welcome into the show, Joe. I don't think I've seen a comment from you before, so welcome to the stream. Just got into SBG since the lockdown. I can't wait to play my first proper event. I can't wait to play my first proper event in a year. These streams have really helped me. Thank you so much, Harry. They are excellent. Nice one, Joe. So you have been in before. Thanks for commenting this evening. Top Table Steve says hello. Good evening, gents. And Steve says, still love your Gandalf on cart, Sam. Class. Oh, I haven't got a picture of that. But is this? Have you made a nice conversion with all the fireworks poking out and stuff like that? Or
yeah. So I got this a clump foliage and glued them to like a wire armature. Made some rockets, stuck them in the back of the cart, sprayed it all up, dusted it with some white paint to make it look like smoke. It was one of my original conversions. It was a long time ago that I did that one. But
wow, Sam, have you got a photo of that somewhere? Because if you can send it to us, that'll be amazing. I know you're on your phone, aren't you? So you won't be able to. Oh well, we'll have to try and track it down and post it in the group later or something, because that sounds amazing. I'd love to see that. Nathan says, lovely alternate scheme for your Knight of Dol Amroth. We'll have more on that later. These are the questions. we'll keep Michael's questions for later because we're going to talk about that. Top Table Steve says, nice t-shirt H. Yes, this is proudly the Scouring of Cheshire 2019. So this was a good one. This never paint an elf, Lord Gimli, and Sam, you do a great job. Harry, you're right. There you go. I'm glad I wasn't the only one to hear that, Steve. I see what you're talking about. Right, and Michael's got another sensible question for later. So excellent. Cool. So that's the first kind of news is those excellent Quest of the Ring Bearer re-releases, and it was confirmed earlier on Warhammer TV, by the way, that they're going to stay in the range this time, which is really good. So they're not just limited releases, which is awesome. So, but there's also this list of other ones that they've teased ahead. So there's Círdan and Galadriel and Frodo and Sam in Orc armor, Mordor Orc captains, these sorts of things. Murin and Dra. As well. Now they're interesting. I'll go into that in a second. But some of these, they haven't been confirmed by Games Workshop, so maybe they're on limited release or made to order or something like that. But either way, there's plenty of cool stuff there. Murin and Dra, can you remember Murin and Dra, Sam?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, they were big. They were my main opponents usually when I'd play a game of strategy battle.
Really?
Yeah. I'd never be able to play the dwarves, even though I despise the elves as much as possible. Every single person that was my usual opponents played dwarves, so I was forced into the realms of men and orcs. But I played Murin and Dra quite a bit. They were.
Yeah, I was just going to say that these two, I think this is an interesting one to be on the list because they are featured in the Shadow in the East book, which I've got somewhere down there, of the Easterling fame. And of course, that links in nicely with this other teaser we had in the new year. I think, I mean, I don't know about you, but it screams Easterlings, doesn't it? What do you think about this?
Yeah, it really does scream Easterling. Just looking at the edges of the armor potentially. Well, it does scream Easterlings. Initially, I was like Corsair Reavers maybe, but then seeing most people's comments on it and where they were going with it, it does feel very reminiscent of the Easterlings.
I think it's the hats that does it for me. The kind of weird hooks, or I don't know quite how you describe those helmets, but they've got the little spikes on, haven't they? But that's, to me, this is getting very exciting because I'm a big fan of Shadow in the East. I think it's probably my favourite of the old supplements. And I've had a prediction. I pinned it to the mast in October, saying I reckon that the next big supplement is going to be the War for Erebor or something like that. Right. We've had Rohan at war. We've had Gondor at war. Now I think Erebor at war, which is cool because it rhymes as well. And I like the idea of doing that with Easterlings, a few of the Erebor heroes, and them putting Murin and Dra back in the frame makes me think, oh, that's interesting because they from Erebor, they wander around and they fight Easterlings, and all that makes for a wonderful concoction to make us potentially have some of that. I mean, it's a theory, Sam, but I don't know what you think to it.
Yeah, I think your quid's in there. Definitely. I think that that's what I'm betting on anyway. That will be the next big release, which would be great. It'll be amazing. Always been a fan of the aesthetics of the Easterlings. Always thought it was a shame we didn't see more of them in the movies. And seeing more miniatures like with that aesthetic will be absolutely brilliant. Really excited about it. And there's going to be more dwarves. Who doesn't love dwarves?
Absolutely. I mean, you're right about the Easterlings. I mean, for all we know, they could literally just be marching into Mordor to be cannibalized by orcs and eaten because we just never really see them. I think there are like 2 frames during Minas Tirith where you can see them fighting in the background, but I mean, nobody would actually see them see them if you're not paying very much close attention. So, Top Table Steve says, "I've come around to your way of thinking, Harry. Makes complete sense. Murin and Dra sealed the deal." Yes, I've been trying to convince Steve for ages, and then now he'll probably be wrong because he predicted just a standard Easterlings expansion, but I don't know. It could go either way. Murin and Dra were exclusively that. Oh, look, he's painting cataphracts horses as I listen. Kill me now. I think it's almost certain to be that, though. I just think it would be a great idea, and the fact that they're delving back into Hobbit releases, they've done the Gundabats, all that sort of stuff. I thought, oh yeah, they'll probably try and finish off all the models, like for example, catapult trolls and stuff like that. That they've always said or will release models for everything in that's got a profile, and it makes sense to link that all in a book and have the wars in Erebor, and then have a few Easterlings and have a few of the guys from the Battle of Five Armies. I mean, tell me I'm wrong, Sam. Tell me I'm wrong.
I don't think you are wrong. I think it makes perfect sense. I do think it makes sense. They're sort of moving up that way, aren't they? So they could tie in the Hobbit releases with the Lord of the Rings releases, which would be great.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, I've very firmly put my banner on the mast, or whatever you call the phrases. So at least everyone will know when it comes out that it's not that at all. Then you can say so. So there we go. That's a bit of the news. I don't know whether there's any other news that I've missed. But either way, I think 2021 is going to be pretty cool. I mean, there's the Amazon TV series as well that's lots of people have been getting a bit excited about this last few weeks. I mean, there's still that big question over whether Games Workshop's actually going to make models about it and whether they've got the rights or anything like that. But either way, I can't wait to see it, the series.
Yeah, 100%. Anything Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth related, I'm excited about. Like it could be a kids anime TV show, and I'd be over the moon about it. Anything in the Middle Earth world is super exciting for me.
Yeah, so. I think it is. I mean, I think I've always been kind of excited by the new books, like the Children of Hurin and things like that. But then when I get down to it, I'm not actually that much of a fan of reading those older ones, and I'm a bit lazy, and and all that sort of stuff. So it's nice to know that someone else is going to do the hard work for me and read all of that stuff, and then turn it into something visual that I like. So I hope anyway. So that'd be good. Although I have read some of the appendices and stuff like that, I think. Yeah, it would be great to see it as a video. So there you go. Just let get in on the comments. What do you think? Am I right about the Easterlings situation? Is it going to be War in Erebor? What about the TV series? Drop in comments. I'm always interested. Oh, there we go. See, we've got one. Guessing the ongoing situation having a bearing on GW release and production schedules, but great that SBG is still getting regular looking. Yeah, that's a good point, Michael. They're clearly interested. It's almost as if they're building up to a big re-release of SBG at the end of the year when they've got a new Amazon TV series, they've got a new box set and all that. Who knows? I'm just getting wildly excited about the prospect, even if it's probably not going to happen. But anyway, right, okay. So now we've sort of scoured the news. We're going to talk about your painting and your detail stuff in a minute. But first, this is part of the show I don't think I warned you about ahead. This is the bit where we play a game that I haven't really named properly called Interlude. Anyway, it's an interlude between the newsy section and the sort of main topic. And this is where I want everyone else to, not necessarily put your paintbrushes down, but certainly get ready. Keep your eyes on the screen. So I'm going to be playing a clip from the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit movies. And you just have to watch this clip very carefully. And after the clip, I will be giving you a question or two to ask, and you have to answer it. That's all. You just have to pay very close attention and ask you a question. Sam, does this all make sense?
Yes, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, good. So everyone get your paintbrushes down. We'll play a little video clip, and then afterwards I'm going to ask you the question. So I'm not going to ask you beforehand. That would make it too easy. Or sometimes too easy. Anyway, here we go. Here's the clip for our interlude. There we go. So you've watched the clip. Now you have to answer the question. Everyone will be ready. Oh, here we go. Look, people are already guessing. So to people who are veterans of the stream already know that I'm going to be asking a ridiculous question. I've got some good ones, actually. Is it 8 Ents, says Steve. Not 8 Ents already. 14 shades of green. No, it's not that. Is it 10 bounces? You're getting warmer there, Ian. Is it 8,659 gallons of water in the stream? No, it isn't. The question, of course, is how many orcs, or I think they're Gundabad orcs, how many orcs does Bomber dispatch? And by dispatch, I mean, knock to the floor, we assume that they're dead. Dispatch in that scene. How many do you think that is? How many guys do you think he knocks over? I would play it again, and I don't know whether it'd actually help you that much. So how many do you think? Just so I'll let people have a quick time, because there's a bit of a delay on the comments before people have a go. But I'm going to give a vague prize to the winner who gets the closest. So Sam, people are starting to get their answers in. Sam, what do you think? What is your guess as to how many orcs? And actually, I'll allow one either way of the.
Okay.
Go on, Sam. What do you think?
So I actually started counting it halfway through. Yeah. So I was like, it's going to be the orcs. But I didn't realise this until like after the first couple of frames. So I missed a couple at the beginning. I'm going 19.
Ooh, that's a good guess. That is a really good guess.
I think it's either 18 or 20, but I'm going 19 in the middle.
Okay. Well, let's see what people are guessing below. We've got quite a lot of good guesses. We've got 23 Smaugs, says Frederick. 23 is a good guess, but not Smaugs. Fohammer's 22, not bad. Nathan says 12 orcs, so quite a lot less from Nathan. Michael says 17. Luke says 15. Michael Haskell on 18. Imri R is on 26, so the highest so far. Welcome to the stream, by the way, Imri R. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I haven't seen your name before. Ian Whitehouse says 14. So this is interesting. So I think if you look at the average, it's looking about where you've suggested. So Michael, I think, is probably about slap bang in the middle of the guesses from 12 to 26. Now, I've got a magazine. Now, I'll pick it up. Hold on. I've got a magazine here, so people may be familiar with this, the SBG magazine. This is issue 9. This is the one that Tom and Damien produce. It's a very good magazine. This is issue 9, and recently they did a. Let me just turn the page. The most valuable profile in the Hobbit trilogy, which is basically assessing the damage done by various different models and working out whether they're good value. And in that, there is a little shot of a very good shot of Bomber. Look at him there. He looks great, doesn't he? In the little stream. And they say that, and I must say, I think they're wrong. They say 16 were killed during when he was in a barrel. But they may be just saying the barrel, because, of course, he does dispatch others following the barrel. And I made it 5 people that were dispatched following the barrel. So I'm going to give you a point, not that we're really counting points, if you've said 21 or 22. So the closest is definitely Fohammer with 22. And for that, Fohammer, you get to win this. Here you go. A draft event draft just for you. Well done, Fohammer. So 22 is the answer. Although according to SBG magazine, they think it's 21, but I'm not convinced. I think it's 22. So well done, everyone, for guessing along, playing along to the interlude. See what I did there? It's very good. And we've got a lol from Michael Collins. I'm assuming that's at my interlude joke, although I think it may have been a bit earlier. But well done. Thanks very much for guessing. Oh, he's swelling up already. Excellent. I hope it's because of the end draft and not for other reasons. Anyway, so there we go. That's the interlude to divide us up between news and other stuff. So now let's get serious. Let's get genuinely really very serious, Sam. So this is all about painting. It's all about painting and the hobby. So we mentioned earlier you've got. I'll try and get the picture up again. The reason I put you on is because of this model, which is absolutely delightful. This is what I saw this and I thought, you know what? This is an amazing model. It's basically went viral, or the equivalent of going viral for the GBHL, seen by thousands of people. It was the most engaged with post for a great number of days, I think, in a 60-day period, essentially. So it was amazing, which is really awesome, because there's a lot of good stuff that goes out on the Great British Hobbit League. So let's talk talk about painting a bit more. I think we had some specific questions about the painting of this job earlier. So let's see what Michael says. First of all, was that model Sam's first time using contrast paints? And I'm going to add a little addendum to this. Are contrast paints any good? Do you actually like them? Because I've never actually used them yet, and I'm not utterly convinced.
So that wasn't the first time I used contrast paints. I'd used them on pieces of miniatures before, and tried them out. That's the first time I've ever used them like wholly on a miniature. Trying to completely paint one with contrast paints. I think they are a great tool. I think they're amazing for what they do. I don't think they are the end of like the be all and end all of painting. You don't just paint with contrast paints. They're like washes and dry paints and inks and like different mediums that you use in your painting to help you achieve the effects you want. I don't think I could achieve the same standard with contrast paints on every miniature if I was to go, I'm fully painting this with contrast. So I think that's a good point, though. I've seen people sort of saying, "Oh, just paint it in contrast, just paint it in contrast," and I don't think they were designed to be like that. They're designed to be part of the whole outlook. Although, yes, you can do some quite good stuff just from a plain only in contrast. I think relying on them entirely is probably a bad idea. Although, having said that, I mean, you can get great tabletop ready stuff. I mean, it's great to get an army if you really want to do an army quickly. And maybe if you're a beginner or haven't painted before or just want to do something and you're not confident with the schemes, then maybe it is the way to go. Yeah, 100%. I think a big part of it was GW's marketing when they first released them. Like they were like, this is like how you get your army painted. I use them a bit like the old inks, so like very similar to that. They're like a really heavy wash. I think they're brilliant. I think they're amazing. They do the job that they were like that they are there for. They're different to washes. They give a higher contrast, which is brilliant. But I do think they're just another tool in the arsenal of us painters. I don't think they're the be all and end all of paints. I would still use base paints and layer paints alongside them to improve the look of them. So
fair enough. And Michael sort of says, where do you see the place of contrast for you going forward? And I guess we kind of touched on that a little bit already, but will you be painting with contrast paints in almost every model, or is it specific colors, or how do you decide to use contrast or not, I guess?
So, like the biggest one for me, there's a few in the range that are absolutely amazing, and I will probably use on most miniatures going forward. They've changed my color recipes for certain things. Like every painter, like you have your way of painting skin, you have your way of painting metallics. I think with me trying out the contrast paints, some of those like go-to recipes that I usually do have completely changed, and have gone heavily into using contrast as a base coat, and building up from there. I don't think I'll use them wholly on every miniature, but I will use at least one contrast paint on every miniature I paint from now on. I feel currently. Are
there any specific colours that you would recommend in contrast then?
Yeah. So the first one, which is phenomenal, is Basilicanum Grey. That over a base coat of Lead Belcher is better than an old oil wash, in my opinion. It goes on a little bit heavier. You can use the contrast medium to sort of dull it down, but the sort of highlights it leaves after, it's not as patchy as the Nuln Oil wash can sometimes go over the Lead Belcher, and you can get that higher contrast in some of the deeper recesses. That has just been phenomenal for me. I use that on all my metallics now. Like it's been brilliant. Yeah,
so it's completely and utterly converted you.
Yeah, 100%. It come from painting my 40k miniatures. So I was painting them and listening to loads of different podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff. And people were talking about contrast paints. And I looked into it a little bit more and researched it a little bit more. And I was like, these are actually a really good tool to use. So I bought a couple, and then I bought a couple more. And I've got almost...
Nuln Oil then? Have you got a load of Nuln Oil just sort of sat there looking a bit sad?
Yeah. The same with Agrax Earthshade as well. I went and bought like just as when GW reopened their store, I was running low on a lot of things. I went through maybe like in that couple of month period where they shut, I went through maybe 4 pots of the Agrax Earthshade and 2 pots of Nuln Oil just in painting. I was like, that's like ridiculous. I've never painted that much in my life in such a short space of time. So I bought the same again, thinking that I would use it up, and I've hardly opened them.
Really?
To do,
wow.
Yeah. I've gone through the contrast a lot more.
That's interesting, because I've got a lot of old paints. I went through a period of buying armies off people because I wanted to get certain models, and people sort of say, oh, I'll just sell you all my Lord of the Rings stuff for £100 or whatever it was, and they always like, oh, do you want the paints? And I was like, well, yeah, sure. So I've got loads and loads of old Citadel paints and old Nuln Oils and old Badab Blacks and all that sort of stuff. So I almost don't want to get into contrast paints, and I almost wish you'd said that contrast paints were crap, because then I'd be able to go, yeah, it's fine, I'll just use my old ones. And now I'm convinced. I feel like I should give them a go, but I do have an awful lot of paints, and I don't want them to go to waste because I've got literally boxes of them. So I really don't want to do it, but that does sound convincing.
Yeah, 100%. I still think there's like the old paints are really useful, and like I wouldn't use contrast paints for absolutely everything. There are still uses for the washes and the shades. Did you say you've still got like Badab Black and like Devil and Mud and all of that?
I've got Devlan Mud. I've got quite a lot of that. Badab Black, I think I do have one other one. And
okay.
The one that I've got at the moment, it's right at the bottom of the pot, so it's almost like bits with a bit of water, with a bit of medium. So it's not actually very good. But I think I should just throw it away.
They are the worst tasting paints of all time.
Oh, yeah.
They're
all disgusting. And I'm
absolutely disgusting.
Actually, this is a good question. I wonder, are you and people comment below what you are as well. Are you a brush licker?
Yeah, 100%. Like 100%. I've painted miniatures.
I don't know how to do it without it.
Yeah, I know. I've honestly painted miniatures without water before, just because I've forgotten to get it, and just like I like halfway through the painting process, I'm like, I haven't washed my brush out yet. I've just been licking it. Like it's You're like, oh, that's not good at all.
You can do that with foundation paints, because those things taste awful.
Yeah, they were horrible.
I remember reading in the game the White Dwarf, when they released them, that they said exactly this in the White Dwarf. They said, just so you know, they're non-toxic, but they do taste a lot worse, or something like that. It made them joke about it. And I was like, that's actually really useful to know, because they were pretty awful. But as soon as I read it, I thought, I've got to taste them now. But yeah, that's really interesting. What are you? So everyone, comment below. Are you a brush licker? I'll be careful to say that carefully. Okay. Michael says, Sam, what are your top 3 models that you've painted over the years, and why? I mean, we might actually have some pictures of some of these if you answer the right way.
Yeah.
Photos before.
The top 3 are my Necromancer. I really enjoyed doing that miniature. Really loved it. It was so much fun to convert, and it was an idea that I had in my head for about a year and a half, and I didn't know how to do it. And then I finally plucked up the courage to slice into a Sauron miniature and start drilling holes and then gluing flock to it. And
it looks amazing as well. I love the idea.
Cheers.
Was this? I'm guessing you just wanted to use the old Sauron model, because now I think about the Necromancer has been in the range since ages ago, hasn't it? The Fallen Necromancer book. So why did you want to do it with the Sauron model rather than that other Fall of the Necromancer Sauron?
I really wanted to get as close to the images in the film as possible, with Sauron in front of the eye, coming out of the shadows a little bit. So I wanted to get as close to that as possible. I did toy with the idea of using the Necromancer miniature, but at the time I still think he comes in metal. So
yeah, he did.
Yeah, drilling holes and converting them up was something that I wasn't necessarily looking forward to.
So the resin Sauron then.
Yeah, it was a Finecast one, and I know some people have had bad opinions of Finecast over the years, but the main thing for me has been it's amazing for cutting up and converting. Don't have to get the saw out at all. Just use a hobby knife, and it's easy to reposition stuff, drill holes into. But it was still quite nerve-wracking having it was £35 or something like that, and I'm gluing clump foliage to the back of it with super glue, and I'm like, I'm not sure if this is going to work. I have no idea if it's going to work. We'll just see how it goes.
Well, sometimes it takes great sacrifices to make a great hobby, and this is really very, very good. I mean, I love the idea, just the concept of having him with the balls of smoke and stuff. It just looks. Excuse me, it just looks really cool, and then you've got in there with the rest of the Nazgul and the Keeper. And I think, did you take this? I think I saw this one. This one must have gone to Throne of Skulls. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe it did. Yeah, it was a Throne of Skulls. So 1,000 points, friendly gaming, which was awesome.
It's perfect. Yeah. Cool.
Every single game I had with this army was phenomenal. It fast become my favorite strategy battle army of all time. Like I will take it to another event. Like when there's another event, I will take it because it was so much fun to play. I had some great opponents. There were some great matchups where I probably shouldn't have won, but I managed to pull out a win. So yeah, it was a really cool army to play with. I think the rules are brilliant for them, and the way they play on the battlefield definitely.
And the way they synergize together as well is really cool as well, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't think any other army operates like them. So they're so unique, and being able to like play with them was just so much fun. The Necromancer in particular was amazing. Like I've never used a hero that big, and I'm not really I don't really use magic that much in the games because it can get complicated, and I'm a very casual gamer, so I avoid it sometimes, just because it means I don't have to think about it. But it was great in this army, and it was really fun to use the Necromancer.
Well, that's awesome, and that was just the first of the three models. Michael said, "What are your top three models you painted over the years? Are any of the others on the picture there? Because I must say I love the Keeper of Dungeons, the new model in particular, but the Keeper is a really dynamic model. I think they did a great job of that one.
Yeah, I think he's a brilliant model. I wouldn't put him in my top three. I put my Smaug in my top three. That was really fun to paint. It was really intimidating once again, but I think that's why it was one of my favourite miniatures. Because
did you do that with an airbrush? Because I know a lot of people seem to go for an airbrush, but I've never used one, and
I've never used one either. I contemplated buying one and trying it out just to see if it would work, but I basically used spray cans to base coat it. So I sprayed it red, and then I got a sandy coloured spray paint and dusted it, and then I used like wet blending and just wet blended up to really bright yellow, just to sort of fade it in. But that base coat really helped sort of blend it. I do wish I had an airbrush for it, but as soon as I started painting it, I fell in love with it, and I just kept going and going. I think I painted my Smaug in 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just 2 days of I'd booked a week off work, and I had nothing to do, so I was like, let's do some painting. And I had 4 months until Christmas when I got the Dale to go with the Smaug. So I was like, I've got 4 months to paint this Smaug, and then I'll get the Dale.
I now know which one this. I'm sure. I thought I'd probably seen it before. This was the one where everything was on fire, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's an Ardacon once. Is that right?
I didn't. No, I didn't take it to Ardacon.
Okay. No, was it? It was a Warhammer World one, was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is cool. And from what people say, everyone who's had a Smaug has always said that they've been great fun to paint. The model's really cool, and it does look really cool. I must say, it does look great. And even I can't remember which, Alan or Michael Perry, when I interviewed them for the channel, they said this was hands down one of their favourite models they made. So sculpted. So it is a lovely model. I mean, it's a bit silly in terms of the size for the game, but it's nice that it's there. Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely. So have you got a third and final one?
Probably my Bolg on Warg. Running across the ice. Just because he was sort of a last minute addition to the army.
That's not a very big picture, but he is there.
yeah, he is there right at the front. But doing the base was really good fun, and he was just really, really enjoyable to paint.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it's a little bit of a controversial controversial model because of the length of his warg. And I mean, do you think it's a good model? I mean, but obviously, if you like painting it, then I'm guessing so.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I liked the limousine warg. I thought it's quite good. Yeah, I think it looks great. I think if Bulg had been sat on a normal size warg, it wouldn't have been as imposing. So yeah, I really like it.
And I do think that the face in particular of the warg looks really cool, and I like the blood and all that, and the ice, which is being covered up by my banner. How did you do that? Is that resin of some sort, or plastic, or what is that?
Yeah, so it's just like plastic sheeting that I got from a couple of picture frames. It's just that like rubbish plastic that goes in the front. I then cover it in super glue, and then while the super glue is still wet, I wet my hand with water and just flick water all over it so it dries and mists up. And then you get a hammer and you just smash the plastic to pieces whilst it's in a bag. So put it in a bag and then smash it to pieces. And then you got loads of tiny little bits of ice that just got super glued over a blue base. It was really fun to do. I got to use a hammer in my Middle Earth hobby, which was amazing. I really enjoyed it.
That sounds like a great idea. I wish I'd done that, because I recently did the Thorin and Azog base. I got them for Christmas from my SBG Santa. If you're watching, thank you very much to SBG Secret Santa. But they're really great models to paint. But that would have been a great addition to have a bit of fake ice on the base. That's a really cool idea. So there you go. There's your top 3 models. So Smaug, Bolg, and the Necromancer, all Dol Guldery, all Hobbity, which is cool. Luke says, does Sam have an Insta page to peruse some of his other work?
I don't, unfortunately. I do have a Twitter, but that's all 40k stuff, unfortunately. I haven't posted a lot of my strategy battle stuff.
What's your Twitter, just so that people can have a look at that if they're having a look?
I think it's oh god, I think it's McG, so MCG Samwise. That's
MCG Samwise.
Yeah.
So I'll put that on a ticker at the bottom, so people can have a look, and then you can maybe then you can start putting your SBG stuff on there, and people will start seeing it. Either way, there you go. So that's one more question. I know we've got some more. I'm going to have to scroll back through some more stuff. Let's actually just take a brief break. We've got some comments. I think I've got everything the wrong way around, because I asked people for your questions and then other things. So Michael says, I've got my eye on some Deadmarsh Spectres for the in the new thing. So I must say, Deadmarsh Spectres, is nice to see some of the Angmar models coming back. The Barrow Whites, the Deadmarsh stuff, that's really cool. It'd be great to have them for the Quest of the Ring Bearer stuff. Might be tempted with a couple of other things. Don't tell Penny, though. yes, we'll keep it secret from Mrs. Haskell, don't you worry. And Top Table Steve says, yes, I'm right about the releases. Okay, let's get to the thing. Right, more questions. Nathan says, have they replaced washes for you? So I guess we're back onto contrast.
On certain things, yes. They've replaced quite a lot. So mainly on my metallics. I still have washes and I still use them, but I use them more for like the pin washing and getting like into the deep recesses with stuff. Whereas the contrast I'll use is the overcolor. Sometimes I do water it down so it's not as hard and harsh. So I do still use washes. They haven't completely replaced them, but they've changed how I use washes as well. So I don't use it for the all over the metals. I use it for little areas all over the miniature. So.
I'll come back to the Stephen and Dan have both asked questions about contrast as well, but maybe we should reset things a bit more. Ian Whitehouse says, I'm a newbie. When do you use inks and what do they give? So I'm guessing by inks you mean generally washes, contrast paints. So these are more watered down colours. And so if you're new and you've had no idea what contrast paints are, why to use them? What is useful about an ink, I suppose, to draw it back right to those basics?
So inks are really good at adding like depth and shadows to certain areas. So to use a similar ink over a base color. So for instance, a dark brown over a light brown base coat. So it will create those shadows and like really define those recesses. You can also try something a little bit weird with them. So like reds, I generally use washes of like purple on them, so that will create a deeper color in it. So they're really good for that, which is their primary use. But you can also use them for like glazing and like adding hints of color to certain areas on miniatures.
When you say glazing, what do you mean by glazing?
So like watering down the washes even further with like a medium, so like the contrast medium or the Lamian medium, and then washing it over areas. So like around noses and like so it'll make it slightly more red if you use a red glaze, and yeah, so you can add a little bit more color into it, but you build it up over loads of successive layers to slowly build up that sort of stronger color on the top, so it doesn't look quite so like it's not a stark contrast between the two, between the base color and what you're glazing it in. So
that's some good points there. I know you didn't ask for my opinion, Ian, but because it's a newbie question, I feel I can respond. I use washes when they're useful for tying lots of different disparate colours together. So sometimes I'll, for example, and in fact, I've just painted a ruffian, which I'm going to do a painting tutorial on the channel very soon. But I painted a ruffian, and I did it in like all the different kind of base coats. So I started with a sort of tan brown, and then a bluish grey on a different part, then a green or like a kind of khaki green on one part. And then I washed everything in Devlan mud or a dark brown wash. And before, they all looked very different and almost clashing. But when you wash everything in a certain color, it can tie it all together and make it just feel more unified as a model, maybe, and sometimes make it look more realistic, more normal, and less clashy. So that's one of the great uses for certainly for dark black washes and dark brown washes, those sorts of things. And Sam, you made a good point about using different colors. I remember someone telling me once, use dark green washes on red. And I was like, no, but it really worked. It looks great.
Yeah.
So have a bit of an experiment. Don't do it on maybe your Smaug or whatever, but have an experiment with different kinds of colours of washes and you'll be surprised at the results. Recently, I did some purple washes on brown skin on my Wildman of Druiden, and the purple. You would think, why would you wash a brown with purple? But it gives it just a different kind of look to it. It adds a bit of difference, and I don't know, I can't really describe why, but it just helps. So yeah, there you go. That's some newbie reasons to use ink. So Ian, I hope that answered the question, and feel free to drop any more newbie questions below. We can't assume that everyone's as great a painter as Sam. Top Table Gaming says this is for contrast, they're great glazes when thinned down, but for me the browns are great. Brighter colors not so much. I think he says Wildwood, the best brown ever. So that's interesting.
100% agree.
Yeah,
100% agree with that. Yeah, it's one of those colours that it's just phenomenal. Wildwood, it's brilliant. Like it just that over a base coat of like a grey or a white, it makes a really sort of deep dark red, very close to that sort of Rhinox hide scorched brown, but it's got highlights already on it, which is brilliant.
Interesting. See, I've just been started painting using Dryad bark and Gawthor brown. They're my new favourite browns. So
yeah, they're brilliant.
Because I haven't opened them for ages because, as I mentioned, I've got lots of old browns, and I'm just coming to the bottom of my scorched brown box. So there you go. Maybe I'll have to try Wildwood eventually. I'll get there eventually. Dan says, welcome, Dan, by the way. I didn't see you arrive, but nice to have you in. Contrast are another tool in the box. A lot of top painters are using them thinned down to smooth transitions on blended. I'm excited by the possibilities. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I guess that's very advanced stuff, though. I mean, I don't blend. I don't do that. That's not something I ever do. I've tried it, but I'm not quite there. I think it takes too much time and effort. But have you used them for that reason?
I've experimented with them a little bit on some of my other miniatures. They are great for it. I'm very much like yourself, though. I blending and glazing are things that I like to occasionally use. I don't use it on every miniature because it does take patience, and I can be very impatient when it comes to painting sometimes.
Well, I know Dan is one of those rare hobbyists who pretty much paints everything as soon as he gets it, but he does amazing paint jobs, and I think he takes quite a lot of time and pride in each model. Certainly from what I gather, Dan, tell me if I'm wrong, but it looks like some of the things that he's been sharing recently of Gothmog and things like this that he's been painting look amazing, and he doesn't seem to have a backlog. It doesn't seem to exist for Dan, so that's amazing. So that was so Luke says Wildwood is also the best brown, which there you go. So it's another vote for Wildwood brown. Maybe I should try that. Then we're talking about brush lickers. So Nathan says, I'm definitely a brush licker. The Devlan mud era paints were made of organic matter. They rotted faster. Maybe that's why mine are tasting even worse now after many years.
Yeah, I bet.
Michael Haskell says, I use the bottom of washes for bases. They work well with the accumulated bits, and I'm not a brush licker. Michael, wow, you're on the other side of the fence. That's interesting, using the bottom of washes for bases. I think I'm going to do that with my not Devlan Mud, what was it? It's Badab Black. Because it does have little bits in it. Luke says, I'm a brush... Oh, I've just lost it. I'm a brush licker to the point... to get the point after a rinse in the water cup. Yes, I'm with you there. I do wash the brushes first. And actually, I think that's... If you're a beginner, this is the most crucial thing, is you need to wash your brushes. I just think... I'm amazed that when you said that you just lick the brushes clean, almost like a dog would do.
I didn't intend to. It just happened, and then I realised, oh wait, no.
Oh, I see. I think that's one of the things that if you don't look after your brushes, you don't get that point. With your lips, it's just the easiest way of doing it. People who fiddle with I don't see how that can be beneficial. I feel like it's more if you're trying to get your point with the finger, then it's not gonna. I don't know. I just feel like it'll damage it somehow. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's interesting. I always get a point. Sam was almost a Smaug Slayer too, if I remember rightly. Now, you'll have to explain this, Sam. Do you know what Michael's talking about?
Yeah, so after I painted my Smaug and had it fully assembled, all on the side looking beautiful, taken photos, posted it on the GBHL.
Hold on, before you say this, do Smaugs get injured during the making of this segment?
Yeah.
Oh no! Prepare yourself.
Really badly. So I'd finished it. I was going to get some lunch with my friend Paul. So I stood up and I put my coat on. And as I put my coat on, my arm swung out and clicked onto the wing of Smaug, which caught one of the spikes, then flung him across the room. So he fell off the middle of my table, straight onto the floor. His head snapped off, his feet snapped off. All of the little spines down the head went ding, 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 and fell off. And I looked at it, and in my head, I was like, I either laugh or cry. So I just started laughing hysterically. And my friend Paul pulled me downstairs, like, all right, let's go get some lunch. We'll come back and we'll fix it. Don't worry. And it was just like, I can't believe I've done that after being so happy with it. I then had like a day to repin it all, get it all put back together, and then mask up the bits before the throne of skulls. So
man, that sounds horrible. I mean, we've all had models break, but having a Smaug, and especially at the middle of the table.
Yeah, I know. But the fun thing about it was I got to paint the Smaug twice, so I was quite happy. I enjoyed it so much the first time that I thought, oh, let's try it a second time. That sounds like so much more fun.
Well, I mean, good effort though. I mean, I would. I think like you say, laugh or cry. I think I'd be screaming with like anguish, almost like a Luke, from Star Wars, going no, that kind of vibe. That sort of thing happened. But wow.
Yeah, I was very much on that edge, and it was like I've just got to laugh through this. If I don't, I'm not going to stop crying. So.
Oh, I don't. Well, there you go. And just a final question before we get back into some of my ones. Oh no, this is not a question. I think Dan just asks his models nicely to be painted, and his silky voice makes it happen. Dan, yes, Dan from the Out the Frying Pan podcast does have a silky voice. Excellent. Right. Okay. So I've got some more points I wanted to make, in particular regarding your display boards, because we've seen this one earlier with your Sour on the Necromancer. I've seen this one. This is just insane. We mentioned the bowl, and this is the Azog's tower, the signal tower. This is awesome, and this is one of those models that in a game, I don't even know whether you're allowed to use a signal tower that's this big or whatever, but either way, it's awesome. And I mean, do you always like to do display boards and do something a little bit special when you're doing these things?
Yeah, 100%. It's always been like one of my favorite parts of the hobby is creating display boards. I did it for my first ever tournament. So it was a long time ago. I think it was 2012 maybe that was our first Warhammer World event. And we made little display boards out of trays, because we knew we'd have to carry our army around anyway, and rather than just borrowing one of their trays, we thought let's make our own and make them look pretty, make them look cool. So we did them up, and it's convenient. It helps us carry our armies around. It also looks really cool, and they're really fun to make. Like doing scenery at like the end of a project, after painting all those fiddly little miniatures, to then get out the large flat dry brush and like the spray, the rattle cans, and like I used expanding foam on this one, for instance, and just trying all these different things to create boards has always been really fun at the end of a project, because it gets to be a bit messy and a bit like slapdash with some of the painting, which is always fun.
That's a really good point. And yeah, I can imagine. I've always done it the other way around, though. I've always ended up doing like the big terrain stuff first, pretty much, and then doing models that fill it afterwards. Although I suppose with a display board, that's slightly different, isn't it? I mean, so for example, I painted my Kirith Ungol. I've got to build a big Kirith Ungol, and I painted my army after it because I wanted to fill it with people, and because I'd already decided I was going to do it. So, but I mean, how much planning goes into something like this? Or let me have a look at the other one. There's another one here that you've done that's like is that Grimbold charging out of Helm's Deep? And there's another one here that you've got that's in the mines of Moria or the Goblin Town mines in particular. Like, I mean, you must take a lot of time in these, but how much planning goes into it, or is it a bit, let's just give it a go and crack on? What kind of planning goes into it?
Very little, if none. I generally find a base for it. So most of them are based on like picture frames with some MDF like hot glue gunned into the bottom. Right. And then I just grab some foam and just start cutting away. It's a fun bit at the end of the project for me, where I get to just like let loose and just see what happens. Some of them haven't been successes before, but I always learn something from it, and it's just fun to throw pieces onto a board and just see what happens with it, and then start cutting away. The fun thing about scenery is that you can always add something more to it and just like sort of keep building it back up. And because most of it's like expanding foam or like blue foam, you could just carve away bits as well. And if that doesn't go too well, you just glue another piece on and just start again. So very little planning does go into it for me. It's just throw some stuff on a board and see what happens with it. And they generally, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say well, I'm guessing they generally come together is what you're just going to finish on, that they just seem to work out. I've actually sort of had a similar experience with terrain generally. I mean, I didn't plan. I've got a couple of display boards, not very many, but my big terrain Kirith Ungol, I did plan. But I kind of cocked up so much on the plan that I had to cover up and sort of make do anyway. So it kind of worked out in the end. But I think people probably who don't make terrain or have never made a display board are probably thinking, oh, this is really hard. But I think it is easier than it looks. I don't know whether you found that.
Yeah, 100%. Like, just get stuck in, just try some stuff out, see how it goes. I would like to start planning a little bit more around building scenery and stuff, but it doesn't always work out. Usually you have to figure out things along the way anyway, especially if it's like your first couple of times of doing it. So why not just like throw some pieces together and see if it works? Generally, most of the stuff that goes on it is quite cheap anyway, so you don't need to worry about ruining those really expensive miniatures, because it's just expanding foam and polyfiller.
Or polystyrene or insulation board or whatever. I mean, you can actually see just behind me. I never work out the angles. These boxes here, these are full of foam board. I just bought a load of foam board because I want to make some Easterling stuff. And I mean, I think it was 20-30 quid in total, but I've got loads. I'm going to use them all for this project very quickly. I'm never going to use all that stuff, but I'm going to maybe use a fifth of it for this project that I'm planning. But either way, it's very cheap generally compared to, say, as you mentioned earlier, cutting up a Sauron is 30 quid down the drain straight away if you mess it up.
Yeah, 100%. So
absolutely. But I mean, display boards, do you think they're an essential thing now if you want to, say, win a painting competition or do well at a painting competition? Because I mean, looking at this, I don't know how well you did, but I mean, it certainly makes the army stand out in a painting cabinet, and this is a glass cabinet at Warhammer World, I believe.
Yes, yeah. So like my goal when I go to an event is always just to have fun. It's never been to win awards or walk away with anything in particular. I don't like going to events with that sort of mentality. I always like the idea of, let's go and have some fun, and whatever comes my way is fine. So as long as I enjoy making it during the hobby, like side of things, and as long as I enjoy gaming with it, that's the main thing for me. So yeah, I do generally walk away with a nomination, and I do think the display boards help with that because it brings people's attention over to my miniatures, which is great. But the people like looking at my miniatures and saying they're good is really nice to hear after I've spent a lot of time on them. So it's always good to get that sort of recognition. But it's never been.
The big downside of a display board, though, is that when you go to an event, you've got this like enormous thing you've got to carry around with you, and leaving it, you've got to leave it somewhere, and all that sort of stuff. You've got to fit it in the car. All these things that you know, maybe when you first start building it, you forget that you're going to have to transport the damn thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. But the main thing for us is I like to make them as transportable as possible. So I use them as that tray that I carry that army around the event hall on, so they're never too unwieldy or too big. So the idea is that they are there to help me transport my army. So it's also a tool for tournaments, which is great.
I'm guessing this one is one of the bigger ones that you've done, because this is pretty huge. I mean, we see there that that's the signal tower itself as it sort of pieces off for the game itself. But then the whole thing is quite large. Is that the biggest you've ever done? Have you done any major scenery builds before?
I did one for my Smaug, which was like the ruined streets of Dale. That was a little bit bigger. It didn't quite fit in the cabinet, so I generally try and aim to, like, if they do get a nomination, that the whole display board can fit in the cabinet. So I've started to scale down the display boards a lot more as I've gone along in the years. I started off quite big, and then thought, you know what, let's start. Because when I get home as well, I've now got this huge display board that I've got to find a home for.
Yeah, I think that is another point that I mean, it seems that in Australia, I was talking to Lockie from Zorpazorp not so long ago about this sort of thing, about terrain and how maybe in Australia they have so much space because there's just generally more space in Australia. They've got huge garages, everyone has loads of land, they all live in bungalows, whereas here we're all crammed in, and there's lots of you don't really have a lot of space, especially say if you live in London or whatever, you live in a flat. I don't have any room for my stuff. I've got a Kirathungal sat here. I've put my Ringwraith display in the shed now, which is very sad. I love my I did a Flight to the Ford Ringwraith display with Arwen on the other side of the river, but I just didn't have enough room for them, and I think, you know, the main reason for me to buy a big house, it would be that, and you know, I don't have enough money for that, so and that seems to be the reason. But it is true, space is a concern, and I can see why you would do smaller ones.
Yeah, 100%. I always have great ideas for these huge display boards, but I think a big part of it is I live in a 2-bed flat just outside London. Like, it's like I'm not going to have enough room for it. Like, we're already strapped on space as it is. So I think that is a big part of making my display boards a little bit smaller. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, other questions, drop your other questions below in the comments if you have any more for Sam. I know we got a mention. I don't know whether this question. It's more. I like wet blending flames: yellow, white, yellow, orange, red, and a tip of black. I was nervous to start with, but really enjoyed going backwards and forwards over the colours. I did mention I've never really wet blended. I guess maybe I've wet blended flames, but it's certainly a good way to do flames. I guess. I mean, just for the noobs listening, if there are any for painting, how do you do a wet blend, and what does that involve? Is it just quickly putting the layers on as fast as possible, or is it more complicated than that?
Well, so wet blending fundamentally is you're working with the paints whilst they're all still wet, hence the name wet blending. So you would start off with I haven't dived into it too much, but when I do it, I generally start off with dividing what I want to be painted into areas. So with the flame, it would be like the base would obviously be yellow, and then like the higher areas would be orange, and basically applying those paints quite watered down and blending them on the miniature rather than on the palette. So mixing the paints together as you go and building it up and adding shadows in and going back down. People do it a lot with like when you're painting on canvas with like oil paints. They're really good for it. So it's sort of a similar technique to painting with oil paints on a canvas, where you add like an extender, like a medium to them, so they don't dry out as quick, and then you can just work with them a little bit longer whilst they're on the miniature.
Oh, well, there you go. I think I've kind of done it, but maybe not intentionally. Maybe because I was just impatient and haven't let something dry properly. I wanted to ask a little bit about sub-assemblies. I don't know whether this is something you do, but I've seen people on Instagram and on Facebook and all that sort of stuff posting these pictures of like a pencil with like a head stuck in it in a paperclip. Do you do that sort of thing? And do you is there any advantage to doing sub-assemblies?
I have done it before in the past. I think it depends vastly on the miniature, and the main reason I do it is if there's a part of the miniature that you are going to see, but I can't necessarily get my brush into it while it's fully assembled, I would paint it in sub-assemblies so that I could get the paint in there without ruining other pieces that I've already done, other bits of the miniature that I've already done. I do it occasionally, but not. I would say I do it less than I do it, so it just wholly depends on what the miniature is, and if there are those little bits in it.
I've always thought that that it feels like an unnecessary thing, because ultimately, if you can see it, you probably can get a paintbrush to it, even if you've only one hair. I mean, it must be very difficult to find a model that's a spot on a model that's so hard to get your brush into. And yet it's obvious enough to paint. I usually just let the Devlan mud or whatever do the job there and just shade it. But that seems an easy option, I guess. But maybe if you're going for a golden demon or really want to show off your skills, then that is a way of doing it, I guess.
Yeah, I do find it does create a little bit more work than you would usually have to do. So yeah, I do think you are right. Like, just here with some washing, you'd be fine.
I also think if you glue something after that would surely it would the glue bonds to the paints instead of the actual model, so that makes it not necessarily as strong a bond, but also that you might accidentally get a bit of super glue dusting or whatever on the joins and end up ruining your extra super special paint job you've just spent a lot of time doing in a sub assembly. But I mean, I'm sure people do it for a good reason, but it seems counterintuitive to me sometimes.
Yeah, it does. It can work against you sometimes, and I think, it's a tough one. I've seen people paint miniatures wholly like on the sprue, which I personally don't see benefit of doing it. Like you get every tiny little piece, but then you're also wasting your time painting bits that won't be seen.
Yeah, and also some bits that you'll be clipping off, and there'll be that little bit that not painted because it's often joined on the outside of the arm or whatever, and you've got to file it down a little bit. So you're missing all that sort of stuff. But anyway, some people like to do some things differently, and fair enough. Maybe you're one of them. Comment below and let me know why you do sub-assemblies or not. I've stolen some images from Facebook, so apologies, but I just wanted to have a look at some of these pictures some of these things that other people in this chat are working on. So Steve mentioned earlier he's working on Easterling horses while watching the stream. Top Table Steve, thanks very much for commenting, Steve, and they're looking absolutely amazing. All black horses. I can see why you've done that. Black horses are a lot easier than the others, but they're looking amazing. I really like them. I try and do a mixture of horse colours, but they're not. They're annoying. They're annoying, aren't they? I don't know what you think about horse painting, Sam, but they're not my favourites.
No, not at all. No, I've always wanted to do an all-mounted Rohan army, but the horses just put me off it so much. But yeah,
I've seen some really nice ones. A brushstroke. I don't know whether I know he's got. Obviously, he's got a proper name, but he comments occasionally, and he's got some really nice painting tutorials for horses. And I think Warhammer Community had one once, and they were Easterling horses or maybe Candish horses as well. But if you search brushstroke, I'm sure you'll be able to find them. But I do really like Easterling horses. It's just the painting them that's the hard bit. And Nathan has commented on the group saying he's doing basing tonight, and it's really nice to see these models actually, because I've seen Nathan's commented on various different streams and on Facebook over the course of a few weeks, and I've seen this Morananok and Rohan army kind of build up, and I have a feeling, I don't know whether you're maybe a bit more expert on this, the leather browns look to me like they're contrast paints, and they look amazing, but I may be wrong there, but they look really good.
My screen is frozen. Sorry, 2 seconds. I can't see the image.
No, that's fine. But either way, I think that's probably what they are. But either way, Nathan, good effort, good work. They look really, really nice. So there you go. I don't know whether you had any more pictures you wanted to share or comments about the upcoming. Oh, actually, we haven't talked about this one. This is another thing. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask a bit about making bases like this. And in particular, the Watcher jumping out of it. Do you always do a kind of fancy base? Because you've got like the skeletons on it and the Watcher coming out, the wooden boardings. And also, do you make them yourself out of just lollipop sticks or whatever? Or are they resin bases that you've bought?
So that base is Goblin Town scenery cut up and bent and pushed together.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it's just the plastic Goblin Town stuff. I try to keep my stuff as 100% GW as possible. Okay. So I like most of my cobblestone bases are like green stuff and then rolled into and cut into with knives. So that's just to try and keep it as much GW as possible, so that when I go up to Warhammer World, there's no questions on anything at all. Yeah, because most of my armies, if not all of them, are made with tournaments in mind. So heading to those Warhammer World tournaments, I don't want there to be any I know they usually aren't like that, but just in case. So most of it is GW stuff. Yeah.
I think they're a bit more relaxed about the bases generally, aren't they? I mean, I know Matt Davies of Generation Shift fame. He makes lots of resin bases himself, and he's gone to tournaments with his own resin bases, and I think he won one of the Throne of Skulls.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm sure you'll be okay. But this is awesome. And do you always do something fancy like this? Because I'm one of those guilty people who basically always paints my models. Put sand on the base, sprays everything black, and then that's it. That's all. And then hope that I'll come up with something good at the end. So I'll stick a bit of, I don't know, some planks of wood if it's the right thing, or skulls or whatever. Do you always plan that out well in advance, or do you glue your models to the bases afterwards or something?
So I live by the motto of bases and faces. Like they're the two most important things on a miniature. Like it's what I was taught growing up and being taught painting in Games Workshops, being sat there in those little painting tutorials that they used to do. So I always think of how the army's going to be based before I've even assembled the army. So I tie it into the scheme as much as physically possible. And to try and figure it all out together. So when I think about sort of color composition and what is going to contrast well with it, if it's a display piece, like I always like to have that one piece in the army that is like the centerpiece of it. So like with my Azog, it was the Watchtower. With the Goblin Town, it was the Watcher bursting from the boards, and then with the Nazgul, it was the Necromancer. So I always like to spend a little bit more time on their bases and just make sure that it all sort of ties together nicely.
Yeah, I think I probably should think a bit more carefully about that sort of stuff, because I know I often, as I say, I kind of start by just gluing sand on and then spray painting it all black and then hoping that it'll come together at the end. And sometimes I do some fancy stuff, like I chop goblins' heads up and things like that just to strew on dwarf bases. But generally, it is just sand. But I think actually what's transformed my bases is the creation of tufts. Tufts have revolutionized my bases. I used to just do the whole dip in glue and then flock when you started, but then it was dip and glue in sand and then patches of flock, which looks much better. And then it's dipping it in glue, sand, and then tufts, which is or little bits, and they look really good. I always think they look good, but maybe I should be a bit more experimental. As you say, bases and faces are important.
Yeah, 100%. Like a real important thing that I always remember is that when you're looking, like when you're playing a game and you've got that army opposite you. Like you see more of the base than you do of the miniature when you're stood up, like because you're looking down on it. So if those bases have, like, you've spent a little bit of time sort of integrating them into the miniature a little bit, it just sort of adds that little bit of realism to the piece as a whole, and it also draws people's eyes to it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that, you're absolutely right. I'm gonna steal something off Facebook from Brushstroke, because I hope he doesn't mind. It does have a thing, but this is completely thievery. But because I wanted to just show this particular one I saw not that long ago. I'm just kind of vamping while I get this base up. But essentially, he worked. I think it. Or just this speaks for itself. This is the base that Brushstroke has made for one of his new models, and to me, that looks like an insane amount of time and effort has gone into this this base. And lots of people say it's amazing. And the comment, I'm check out Brushstroke on Facebook or Instagram if you're impressed by that, because I certainly am. But like, that looks amazing, and I think that will make an army, even if it's relatively badly painted, look outstanding just by being on that base. So I guess it just show the importance of bases. And Dan Collister's been commenting saying sub-assemblies as much as possible. Models definitely off their bases. Generally, I'll leave an army's bases to the end and paint them all in one go. So and that's something I've never done. I've never I know people do that. I mentioned it earlier, that you sort of stick it on a cocktail stick or whatever and paint it while it's stuck inside a cork. I've never gone for that. I think that maybe that's the next level of paint jobs that I'm perhaps slightly unwilling to do, because it means that I'm going to be spending a lot more time on it. But I mean, they do look great. I mean, your Dan's models look absolutely insane. So.
Yeah, 100%. And well, it just depends what fits the best for your painting style. Like I've it's not always been something that I've looked to do. So I like to do all my base coats in one go, wash it all together. So having it in sub assemblies can make that quite difficult.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I mentioned earlier one of the great uses of washes is tying all that color together. So I guess it can be very easy. I guess it's a fix-all thing. Is washing everything, ties it all together, makes it all easy for me. And I suppose Dan's obviously thinking in a very different way if he's doing it slightly differently and not washing everything, but it works out pretty nicely for Dan. So yeah, each to their own, I guess. Couple more comments. Nathan saying, agreed, Dan. Dan said, detest painting horses, require a lot of work to highlight naturally, and a lot of the older GW horse sculpts are particularly bad for it. Yes, that's true. Those Rohan horses are, they're not very nice, really. They're decent horses, but they break their ankles and they're not great fun to paint. And Nathan agrees. It wasn't until I painted new Aya and I realized how lacking the older horses are in musculature. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, they're just kind of standard, aren't they? Standard thigh, and that's kind of it. Nathan says, no contrast here, maybe next time. Okay, it must have been a nice ink wash or something. It looks good. There's a gap in the market for the next innovation in glue-on based items. Tufts were genius. Yeah, it's a good point. Good point. And tufts are actually, I think they're quite easy to make yourself. I've seen people making them out of PVA glue and hot glue and all this sort of stuff. I mean, what do you think to tufts? Do you make your own, or do you use tufts, or are you a bit more high tech than that?
I do buy my own. I do buy them, but I would like to make my own, just because it seems to be so much cheaper after you've had that initial investment. So I've looked into it. It's something that is on the checklist of hobbying. Is starting to make my own tufts, but I haven't quite got around to it yet. I'm still purchasing them, like 30 of them for however much. So
yeah, insane amounts of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Michael says, as well as tufts, I use the odd bit of rock too, especially with cavalry for my standard bases, but I'm increasingly doing themed bases for an army. Yeah, I think I'm with Michael here. I think we're probably on a similar level in terms of our painting and our bases, that sand, bit of tufts, and then a rock if it's a bigger base. That's me. And they look great though. And I found that the latest innovation for me for on-base items, or not necessarily on-base items, is if you've got sand and you've got sort of mixed sand, which I've got. I just got some builder's sand, which I'm never ever going to finish. But there's like little tiny pebbles that are bigger than the rest of the sand, and I just pick those out as grey or whatever. So you've got brown and then a grey dot. So it just a little simple dot like that can really add a little bit of extra detail to the base, and it makes a big difference to the model. Luke says, I'm a fairly slow painter. I find it a fine balance between painting to a decent tabletop standard I'm happy with, ready for gaming, and spending too long on the same model or models while the backlog grows. Yeah, it is a tough balance. How do you find that, Sam? I mean, you mentioned already you've cleared the backlog pretty much last year. Is it difficult keeping it up and keeping the standard high?
I've always struggled with consistency. Because I paint so erratically sometimes. I'll do month stints and then not paint for a very long time. The first couple of miniatures that I paint in that couple of first weeks back aren't always as good as the ones that I'd finished off in the last painting session. But I just use a large flat dry brush and get the biggest brush as possible, get all those colours down, and just as soon as I start going with it and start enjoying it, I find my painting progresses. If I'm not enjoying something, I just put it down. I just stop painting it, because for me that's the main thing, is that I have fun doing the hobby. I know it can be a chore painting certain miniatures, so if you're not enjoying it, I just put it down. I just move on to something that I will enjoy, and then I just start painting something that I enjoy.
That is a good point. A lot of people see the hobby, or I mean, we all create goals for ourselves or targets, or whether it's finishing an army for a tournament or whatever. And sometimes it might become a bit like a chore because we want to finish it in time, and so it's self-inflicted. Like for example, I know if I've got a tournament coming and I've decided I want to do this army, I've submitted a list or whatever, so I've got to take it, and then you've got to then paint the thing, and then sometimes that really takes the fun out of the job. But I always say this to people about books. People sometimes say, "Oh, I'm reading this book, but I'm really not enjoying it." I say, "Well, just why are you still reading it?" And they go, "Well, I'm nearly halfway through." It's like, well, just stop reading it if you don't like it. Read it. But I think it's the same with hobbies. Like, oh well, I'm painting this army. I really don't like it, but it'll be done soon, and I'll be done. It's like, no, well, just move on to something you like. But if you, then you end up with a load of grey miniatures or half-painted miniatures or something like that. And I guess there's value in finishing things and being satisfied by having finished it and achieved something, which I love about our hobby, is that you always come away with something that you've succeeded in if you've finished it. But equally, if you're really hating painting that 152 ruffian army, then just don't do it.
Yeah, why paint 152 ruffians?
Exactly. What kind of crazy person would do that? It's but either way, I think you've made some really good points there, and generally painting is fun. We do it because we like doing it. I mean, if we didn't like it, we'd probably maybe some people don't enjoy it and paint specifically because they want to enter tournaments or whatever. But there are ways to speed the process up, and I think we can all enjoy it in a little way. But either way, Sam, it's been really great talking to you. I'm sort of finishing off now because it's getting towards the 2 hour mark, and I'm only in for an hour and a half and a bit. So either way, Sam, it's been an absolute pleasure seeing you here and having your insight. Actually, I think it's been really interesting hearing a different topic talks. Usually we talk about games, so it's great to hear a lot of chat about the old painting side of things. And everyone below in the comments, I hope hope it's sort of kept you afloat, kept your painting going, and giving you a bit of an oomph, a bit of a boost this evening on a Thursday. Michael says, thanks, Sam. And Michael says, I found keeping up with hobby podcast YouTube content helps when needing to churn through painting troops and makes it more fun. So there you go. So the great content that we provide, I say we, people have provided, does make the job a little less arduous, doesn't it? So Sam, thank you very much for joining us here on Entmoot. Hopefully you'll come back, and hopefully we'll see you at a tournament and see the next project very, very soon.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. All right, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Cheers. Cheers,
Sam. I'll just finish off by polishing off a few of the last comments. I know Nathan was saying somewhere out there's a Mordor army covered in those Rohan scenery camp pieces. It looked awful, I'm sure, but once upon a time, I must have liked the idea. Did you sell it, I guess? And Dan, agree with you. It's a hobby, not a job. But I have managed in the past to start painting armies I hated, but the doubles list was agreed and lists were submitted. It's a great way to kill hobby joy. Yeah, totally agree with that. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching so far. This has been Entmoot Live. I'm trying to do it every 2 weeks or so. I'm thinking Thursdays, evenings, about an hour and a half or thereabouts max. is good for this sort of thing, because I know it's midweek, so people have work and whatnot. But either way, I hope it helps clear the backlog. I hope it's enjoyable, especially on alternate weeks to other live streams. So let me know if you think this is a bad day to do it, or you'd prefer a different day. But I really appreciate all you guys joining. In the meantime, I will leave you with a little bit of a teaser. I've put together a little video of a few of the things coming up on the channel, which I'm excited about. I've been working on over the last few weeks. So thanks very much for watching Entmoot Live. Here's coming up on the Battle Games in Middle-earth. And then until next time, thanks for watching.